The stars seemed to shake as General Vextar of the Crimson Fleet sent his message across all known space. Every world, every ship, every station received the same broadcast. The massive alien filled the holographic displays of countless civilizations. His forearms moved as he spoke, his voice full of hate and anger. General Vextar was not like humans. He stood nearly 4 meters tall. His skin was dark red like dried blood. 4 powerful arms ended in claws that could cut through steel. His head it was large, with 4 yellow eyes that glowed with cruel intelligence. Sharp teeth filled his mouth when he smiled. Natural armor plates covered his body, making him look like a living weapon. He was the leader of the Crimson Fleet, the most feared military force in the galaxy. His people, the Kreks, were known as the greatest warriors in all of space. They had conquered 17 star systems in just 1 year. Their ships were fast and deadly. Their soldiers were trained from birth to fight and kill now. This terrible general was speaking to the entire galaxy, and his words were aimed at one species in particular: humans, he said, with disgust dripping from his voice. You call yourselves peacekeepers, you claim to protect the innocent. Where are your warriors now? Your entire pathetic race hides behind words and trade deals, while real civilizations fight for honor and glory. The general's 4 eyes blazed with anger as he continued speaking. Every species in the galaxy knows the truth about humans. You are weak, you are soft, you send diplomats when you should send soldiers. You make deals when you should make war. You are cowards, and the galaxy deserves better on Earth in the capital city of New Seoul. President Minho sat in the emergency council chamber. The room was deep underground, protected by the strongest shields humanity could build. Around the long table sat his most trusted advisors, their faces grim as they watched the aliens broadcast. The chamber walls were covered with screens showing star maps, fleet positions, and communication channels from across human space. Red warning lights flashed as more reports came in. The Crimson Fleet was moving toward human colonies. Their massive warships had been spotted near the Outer Rim territories. Defense Minister Yuna slammed her hand on the table, her face red with anger. Sir, this is an insult to our entire species. The Kreks have been attacking peaceful worlds for months, killing innocent people, destroying cities, and now this monster dares to call us cowards. Yuna was a small woman, but her voice carried the strength of someone who had fought in 3 wars. She had short black hair and scars on her hands from her days as a fighter pilot. Her uniform was covered with medals earned in battles across the galaxy. Foreign Secretary Daeho pushed his glasses up his nose nervously. General Vextar commands over 10,000 warships, he said quietly. His voice shook slightly as he spoke. The Kreks military is the largest in known space. They have weapons that can destroy entire planets. Their soldiers are enhanced with cybernetics and genetic modifications. This was a tall, thin man who preferred books to battles. He had spent his life studying alien cultures and languages. He knew more about the Kreks than almost any human alive, and that knowledge terrified him. The Kreks are not just warriors, he continued. They are bred for war from the moment they are born. They train for 20 years before they see their first battle. Their champion would be the strongest among them, enhanced with the best technology. They have President Minho remained calm, his fingers drumming slowly on the conference table. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes, but those who knew him understood that behind his gentle appearance was a will of steel. He had led humanity through its darkest hours and brought peace to the galaxy. And what exactly does this general want from us? Minho asked. His voice steady. Admiral Soman stepped forward, her military uniform crisp despite the late hour. She was the commander of the human fleet, a woman who had never lost a battle. Her short hair was silver, and her eyes were sharp as laser beams. He is demanding we send our best warriors to face his champion in single combat, she said. If we refuse, he threatens to attack every human colony in the Outer Rim. Over 50 million civilians would be at risk. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The Outer Rim colonies were home 2 families, scientists, researchers, people who had never hurt anyone. They were protected by only small defense forces that could never stand against the Crimson Fleet. We have no choice, Yuna said grimly. We must respond. But how our military is built? For fleet operations, not individual combat. We do not have anyone who could possibly match a Krex champion. The humans around the table knew she was right. Their military was designed for space battles, coordinated attacks, and defensive operations. They had never needed individual warriors because they had always worked together as a team, but the Krex were different for them. Individual combat was sacred. Their champions were living legends warriors who had never known defeat. A Krex champion would be 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and natural armor. Their strength would be beyond human limits. Intelligence, Chief Hojin spoke up from his position at the far end of the table. Sir, we have analyzed their champion based on intercepted communications. His name is Grokatar. He has fought in over 200 battles and never lost. He has killed warriors from 12 different species. Shojin was a quiet man who spent his time listening to alien communications and studying enemy movements. His reports were always accurate and always frightening. Grokta is not just any Krex warrior. Hojin continued. He is their greatest champion. Enhanced with cybernetic implants that double his strength, his reflexes are faster than any human could hope to match. His armor is made from materials that can stop plasma fire. The weight of their situation pressed down on everyone in the room. How could humanity possibly respond to such a challenge? They were peaceful traders and diplomats, not warriors. Their strength came from cooperation, not individual combat. Science advisor Minji cleared her throat nervously. Sir, perhaps we could negotiate some kind of alternative to combat, maybe a technological challenge or a test of intelligence, but everyone knew that would not work. The Krex respected only strength and courage in battle. They would see any alternative as proof of human cowardice. Minyo stood slowly and walked to the massive viewport that showed Earth's blue surface below. The planet looked peaceful from space, but he knew that peace was about to be shattered. The general had given them 48 hours to respond. If they refused the challenge, the Crimson Fleet would attack. If they accepted, they would need to send someone to certain death. Actually, Minho said quietly, turning back to his advisors. We do have someone. There is a person who has been waiting for exactly this kind of challenge, though. Room erupted in surprised voices. What did he mean? Who could possibly face a Krex champion? None of them had ever heard of such a person. Yuna stood up. Sir, with respect, what are you talking about? We have no warriors who could match their champion. Our strongest soldiers would be like children against Groktar. Yuna smiled slightly at expression that his advisors had learned to fear. It was the smile he wore when he knew something they did not, when he had a secret that would change everything. Deep in the mountains of Korea, he said, there is a facility that officially does not exist inside. That facility is someone who has been training for this moment his entire life. Someone who represents everything humanity can become when pushed to its limits. Advisors looked at each other in confusion. What facility? What person? The president was speaking of things none of them had ever heard. After 20 years, Minho continued, we have been preparing for the day when someone would challenge humanity to individual combat. We knew it would happen eventually. The galaxy is full of species who respect only strength. We needed to be ready. Admiral Soman leaned forward. Sir, what exactly are you saying? Minyo returned to his seat, his expression serious. We are going to accept General Vexstar's challenge. And we are going to send exactly what he asked for: our best warrior, one person who will represent all of humanity. The room fell silent again, but this time it was different. Now there was hope mixed with the fear. Perhaps they were not as helpless as they had thought outside the chamber. Earth continued its peaceful rotation, but across the galaxy, the Crimson Fleet was moving toward human space, and in the mountains of Korea, someone was waiting for the call that would change everything. Deep in the mountains of Korea, where snow covered the peaks year-round, there was a place that did not exist on any map. The entrance looked like just another rocky cliff face, but behind it lay kilometers of underground tunnels and chambers. This was Project Silent Dragon, humanity's most secret facility. Morning sun had not yet touched the mountain peaks when Jinwoo finished his daily training routine inside the gravity chamber. He moved through combat forms that would have been impossible for any normal human. The artificial gravity was set to 15 times Earth normal, but he flowed like water through movements that seemed more like dancing than fighting. Jinwoo was 28 years old and looked like he could have been anyone's neighbor. He was not particularly tall or muscular. His face was kind, with gentle eyes and a quiet smile. Nothing about him suggested he was anything special, yet he was the result of 20 years of the most intensive training program ever created. Director Hannah watched through reinforced glass as Jinwoo completed his exercises. She had been in charge of the project since its beginning, watching over every aspect of his development. She was a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, but those who knew her understood the deep care she felt for the young man she had helped create. The facility around them was a marvel of human engineering. Training rooms filled with holographic opponents that could simulate any alien fighting-style weapons, ranges where every known form of combat equipment could be tested, medical bays with the most advanced healing technology libraries. Containing the combat knowledge of 100 different species a day, Jinwoo was working on Krek's fighting patterns. The holographic opponents were 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and natural armor, just like the real thing. They moved with the same speed and strength as actual Krek's warriors, but Jinwoo flowed around their attacks. Like he was reading their minds. He stepped aside as massive claws swept through the air where his head had been. A moment later, he was behind the hologram, striking specific points that would disable a real Krex. The simulation ended with his opponent on the ground, unable to move. The council has made their decision, Hannah announced as Jinwoo emerged from the chamber, barely breathing hard, despite the crushing gravity. You are being activated. Jinwoo nodded calmly, toweling off the sweat from his workout. It is about time, he said. Quietly, I have been training for this moment my entire life. What is the situation? Hannah handed him a datapad, showing General Vexstar's challenge. Krek's champion single combat, the entire galaxy will be watching. Good, Jinwoo said, studying the information. I was getting tired of fighting training programs. What the galaxy did not know was that Jinwoo was not the result of genetic engineering or cybernetic enhancement. Those technologies could create stronger, faster soldiers, but they could not create what humanity truly needed. Instead, he was something far more dangerous. From the age of 8, he had been trained in every fighting style known to humanity: karate, judo, boxing, wrestling, and dozens of others. But that was only the beginning. He had also learned the combat techniques of every alien species humanity had encountered: the Valdris, with their flowing movements like liquid metal; the Nexari, who fought with mathematical precision; the Zephyrians, who moved like living storms. Each species had their own way of fighting, their own strengths and weaknesses, and Jinwoo had mastered them. All but physical training was only part of what made him special. His mind had been honed like a weapon. He could process information faster than any computer, analyze an opponent's movements, and predict their next action before they made it. He had studied alien psychology, anatomy, and culture until he understood them better than they understood themselves. Taeyong, the project's lead scientist, approached. With a concerned expression on his face, the Krek's champion will be bigger, stronger, and naturally armored, he said. Are you certain about this? Jinwoo smiled slightly, an expression that somehow managed to be both gentle and terrifying. Doctor, you have. He spent years teaching me that humans do not win through brute force. They win through intelligence, adaptation, and something no alien species has ever truly understood about us. And what is that? Taeyong asked. Do we never know when to quit? The facility around them hummed with activity as technicians prepared for the mission ahead. Jinwoo would travel to the combat zone in a simple courier ship with minimal equipment. He would carry no advanced weapons, no powered armor, no cybernetic enhancements, just his training, his knowledge, and his unbreakable human spirit. In the medical bay, Dr. Suyang ran final health checks on their champion. She had been monitoring his physical condition for years, watching as he pushed his body to the absolute limits of human potential. His muscle density was 3 times normal. His reflexes were faster than any human had a right to be, and his endurance seemed unlimited. But she knew that his greatest weapon was not his physical abilities, it was his mind. Years of study had given him knowledge that no single person should possess. He knew the pressure points of 17 different alien species, the weak spots in their armor, the way they moved and thought. More importantly, he understood something that even the humans around him sometimes forgot. He was not just representing Earth in this battle. He was representing every human who had ever lived, every dream of peace. They had fought for every child they had protected in the communications. Center Chief Analyst Young Ho monitored galactic chatter as news of the challenge spread across known space. The reactions were predictable. Most species expected the humans to refuse or send someone who would die quickly, but a few the older, wiser. Species were asking different questions. The Valdris Council had sent encrypted messages, asking if humanity truly understood what they were doing. The Nexari Collective had run probability calculations that they found disturbing the Zephyrian storm. Lords had begun moving their fleets toward human space not to attack, but to protect these species had fought alongside humans before. They had seen what happened when humanity was truly threatened. They remembered the last time someone had underestimated. The quiet species from the small blue planet Jinwu spent his final hours in the facility, meditating in the silence of the mountain depths. He thought about the path that had brought him here, the years of training, the sacrifice of normal life, the weight of responsibility that now rested on his shoulders, he thought. About the children in the Outer Rim colonies who would die if he failed, about the families who looked to Earth for protection, about the future of humanity among the stars, but mostly he thought about the simple truth that had driven him through every day of training. Bullies had to be stopped when the time came. He walked calmly to the transport ship that would carry him to his destiny. The crew was small, just a pilot and a few support staff. They looked at him with mixtures of awe and fear, knowing that the fate of their species rested in his hands. The ship lifted off from the hidden facility and climbed toward the stars. Ginwu gazed out at the earth below soon. He would face the greatest warrior the Krex had ever produced in front of representatives from every major species in the EPS. Galaxy, the odds were against him. The enemy was stronger, faster, and better equipped, but Jinwu carried something more valuable than any weapon. He carried the hopes and dreams of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there, and he carried the knowledge that sometimes one person really could make all the difference. The response from Earth came exactly 24 hours after. General Vexter's challenge. Every communication channel in the galaxy carried the same message. President Minho himself appeared on holographic displays across known space, his calm voice reaching every civilized world. General Vextar, your words have been heard. Humanity accepts your challenge. We will send one warrior to face your champion in single combat across the galaxy. Beings of dozens of species watched in complete shock. The peaceful humans were actually going to fight. The traitors and diplomats who had never started a war were sending someone to face the legendary Krex champion. On the bridge of the Crimson Fleet flagship, General Vextar stared at the message in disbelief. His four eyes widened before narrowing with cruel amusement. Excellent, he growled to his officers. I was beginning to think the humans had no spine at all. The bridge around him was a monument to Krex military might. Weapon displays showed the firepower of 10,000 warships. Tactical screens revealed the positions of his fleet spread across 3 star systems. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained violence. Who are they sending? Vextar demanded his intelligence officer, a smaller Krex named Thurok, consulted his data screens. Unknown, sir. They have provided no information about their champion. Only that he will arrive at the designated coordinates in 3. Does not matter? Vextar laughed, his voice echoing through the ship's corridors. No human can stand against Groktar, our greatest warrior. This will be over in minutes. In the lower decks of the flagship, Groktar himself prepared for battle. He stood 3 meters tall, his 4 arms moving through combat forms that had taken him 30 years to master. His natural armor gleamed under the ship's lights, each plate harder than steel. His cybernetic enhancements hummed with power, doubling his already incredible strength. Grok had never lost a fight. He had killed warriors from 12 different species, crushed champions that other races thought unbeatable. His claws could cut through spaceship hull. His strength could bend metal beams. His speed was faster than most beings could follow them. Human champion would be dead before he even understood what was happening. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species watched the developing situation with growing concern. The Valdris Council of Elders met an emergency session, their ancient minds trying to understand what the humans were planning. Elder Wisdom Keeper Nell Tash spoke to her fellow counselors in their flowing musical language. The humans would not send someone to certain death. They are not a species that wastes life unnecessarily. There is something we do not understand about this situation. The Valdris had lived for thousands of years. They had seen species rise and fall, had watched the galaxy change through countless wars and peace agreements. They had learned to respect the quiet strength of humanity, even when others dismissed them as weak in the technological world of Nexer Prime. The collective ran calculations on every possible outcome. Their quantum computers analyzed fighting styles, physical capabilities, and tactical possibilities. The results were disturbing probability of human victory against Krex champion. The central processor announced 0.001%. Margin of error 0.0001%, yet the Nexari had worked with humans before. They had seen the strange ability of this species to achieve impossible things through sheer determination and creativity. Their computers could not calculate the value of humans' stubborn refusal to give up. The Zephyrian Stormlords reacted differently. When news of the challenge reached their cloud cities, they began mobilizing their fleets. Admiral Kuhn, the leader of their military forces, spoke to his commanders with urgency. "Humans fought beside us in the Shadow War, he said, his voice carrying the power of controlled lightning. They saved our children. When the Dark Fleet came, they have earned our protection across their storm-covered world." Zephyrian ships began moving toward human space, not to interfere in the combat, but to ensure that, if the humans fell, they would not fall alone. Ambassador Dongmin of the Galactic Council contacted Earth directly from the neutral station orbiting the galaxy core. His message was urgent and filled with concern. "President Minho, surely you understand what you are doing. The Krex champion has never been defeated. This could mean the end of human expansion in this sector." Minho's reply was calm, but carried undertones of steel that made even experienced diplomats nervous. "Ambassador, humanity has faced extinction before. We have survived Ice Age's plagues, wars, and the journey to the stars. We did not come this far to be stopped by bullies, but the champion is a legend." Dongmin pressed. "His strength is beyond anything humans have ever faced." President Minho smiled slightly, an expression that somehow managed to be both gentle and terrifying. "Legends can be defeated, Ambassador. They are just stories until someone proves them wrong." As news of the accepted challenge spread throughout the galaxy, something unexpected began to happen. Ships from dozens of species started moving toward the combat coordinates. Not to fight, but to witness what many believed would be either humanity's greatest victory or its most heroic defeat. The ethereal's mysterious beings, who rarely showed themselves to other species, emerged from their hidden dimension. Ancient and powerful, they had watched the rise of countless Fasus civilizations. Most had disappointed them with their greed and violence, but humans had shown something different. "We will observe this combat," one of the ethereals announced to the galactic community. "The outcome will determine much about the future of this galaxy." Commercial ships changed course to witness the battle. Scientific vessels deployed their sensors to record every moment. Even species that had never contacted humans before sent representatives to watch the combat zone chosen by General Vexstar was perfect for his purposes. An empty star system with nothing but asteroids and cosmic dust orbiting a dying red star. The largest asteroid would serve as the fighting platform, its surface flattened and enclosed with energy shields. Grex fleet arrived first, their massive warships forming a threatening perimeter around the asteroid. Each ship was a weapon of war designed to destroy planets and conquer star systems. Their presence alone was enough to make other species nervous, but they were not alone for long. Within hours, the empty star system filled with observers. Ships from across the galaxy took position at safe distances, their sensors focused on the small asteroid where the fate of humanity would be decided. Never before had so many species gathered to witness a single combat. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if the peaceful humans truly had the strength to stand against the greatest warriors in known space. Earth President Minho stood in the war room watching the displays that showed the gathering fleets. Around him, his advisors worked frantically, coordinating defensive positions and emergency protocols. Defense Minister Yunus said quietly, "Are we making the right choice?" Did not answer immediately. He thought about the children in the Outer Rim colonies, about the families who looked to Earth for protection, about the future of humanity among the stars. "We are making the only choice," he said finally. "Sometimes you have to stand up to bullies even when you know it might cost you everything." In the mountains of Korea, Jinwoo's transport ship prepared for departure. The courier vessel was small and unremarkable. Nothing that would attract attention among the massive warships gathering at the combat zone. Director Hannah stood beside the ship as final preparations were made. She had watched over Ginwu for 20 years, had seen him grow from a child into the most dangerous human alive. Now she was sending him to face an enemy that had never known defeat. You ready? She asked. Jinwu nodded calmly, checking his simple equipment. One final time, I was born ready, he said. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what comes next. Ship lifted off from the hidden facility and climbed toward the stars, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire species behind. Earth continued its peaceful rotation, but across the galaxy, the greatest gathering of witnesses in galactic history prepared to watch one. Humans stand against the darkness. The designated combat zone was a graveyard of stars, an empty system where nothing lived except dust and darkness. The red giant at its center was dying slowly, bleeding light into the void. While ancient asteroids drifted in eternal silence, it was the perfect place for what General Vexstar had planned. The Crimson Fleet had arrived 3 days early, transforming the largest asteroid into an arena of death. Their engineering ships had flattened its surface, creating a circular platform 50 meters across. Energy barriers rose from its edges, reaching toward the stars like the walls of a coliseum. General Vexstar stood in his command box overlooking the arena, his forearms spread wide as he surveyed his creation. Below him, the fighting platform waited empty and ready around him, his officers prepared for what they believed would be the shortest battle in galactic history. Arena itself was a marvel of Krek's engineering, but also a display of their brutality. The energy barriers would prevent either fighter from leaving until one was dead. The surface was made of materials that would not break, no matter how violent the combat became. Viewing platforms floated around the perimeter, ready to give thousands of beings a perfect view of human defeat. Ships from across the galaxy had been arriving for hours. The ancient Valdris brought their crystal observation vessels that gleamed like captured starlight. The technological Nexari deployed sensor arrays that could measure the speed of individual heartbeats. Even the mysterious ethereals had manifested viewing platforms that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Never before had so many species gathered to witness a single combat. The empty star system now held more ships than most worlds saw in a year. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations waited to see if the peaceful humans truly had the courage to face the greatest warrior known. Space Captain Sunho piloted the human courier ship through the massive gathering of alien vessels. His hands were steady on the controls, but sweat beaded on his forehead as he navigated between warships that could have destroyed his entire craft with a single weapon. The contrast was overwhelming. Look at, Demi said to his crew, gesturing at the displays showing the alien fleets. Every major power in the galaxy is here. The Zephyrian Storm Lords brought their entire war fleet. The Nexari have ships I have never seen before. Even the Valdris Council sent their personal guard in the cargo bay. Jinwu sat quietly checking his equipment for the final time. He wore no armor, carried no advanced weapons, just a simple black combat suit and a few tools that looked almost primitive compared to the technology surrounding him. The ship shuddered slightly as they passed close to a Krek's destroyer. Captain Sunho called back to him, "We are about to dock. Are you ready for this?" "Oz, ready as I will ever be," Jinwu replied. His voice completely calmed. The docking process was watched by millions of beings across the galaxy. Every sensor was focused on the small human ship as it approached the arena. Every eye was on the single figure who emerged from its airlock. Jinwu stepped onto the platform alone, walking calmly. Across the prepared surface, he looked incredibly small compared to the massive structures around him. Just one human among thousands of aliens. The crowd fell silent as they got their first look at humanity's champion. He was nothing like what they expected. No towering cybernetic enhancements, no powered armor, no exotic weapons. Just a young man who looked like he could have been working in a shop or teaching children. His calm expression never changed as he walked to the center of the arena. "Is their champion?" General Vexstar laughed, his voice amplified across the viewing platforms. "I almost feel sorry for them, but in the Valdris observation vessel, Elder Wisdom Keeper." Naltash watched with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. Her musical voice carried concern as she spoke to her companions. There is more to this one than appears. The humans would not send a sacrifice. They have learned something in their short time among the stars, something we have not yet understood. The Nexari computers ran constant analysis of the human champions, scanning for hidden weapons. Cybernetic implants or genetic modifications, their results were confusing. The humans showed no enhancements, no hidden technology, no apparent advantages of any kind, yet something in their calculations did not add up. The humans were not a species that wasted life. They had never shown suicidal tendencies in their history. If they had sent this person there, had to be a reason on the Zephyrian. Command Ship Admiral Kuhn studied the human with growing unease. He had fought beside humans in the Shadow War. War had seen their ability to achieve impossible victories through determination and creativity. He looked so ordinary, Kuhn said to his officers. But I have learned never to underestimate the species that defeated the dark. Lethal waiting was almost over. Energy barriers hummed to life around the arena, creating an enclosed space from which neither fighter could escape. The viewing platforms, filled with representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy from the depths of the Krex. Flagship came a sound like rolling thunder. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors as Groktar made his way to the arena, the greatest warrior in Krex history was ready for battle. Groktar emerged from the transport in a display of terrifying power. He stood 3 meters tall, his forearms ending in claws that could rend steel. His natural armor gleamed under the arena lights. Each plate, harder than the whole of a starship, cybernetic enhancements covered his body, doubling his already incredible strength. His eyes glowed with the light of targeting systems that could track the flight of bullets. His reflexes were faster than most beings could follow, enhanced by technology that had cost the lives of a dozen scientists to create. The crowd gasped as they saw the Krex champion in person. It was death-given form, a living weapon that had never known defeat. His presence alone was enough to make the viewing platform shake as beings stepped back in instinctive fear. Groktar looked across the arena at the human and felt something he had never experienced before: confusion. This small, quiet figure was supposed to be his opponent. Where was the powered armor? Where were the weapons? How did the humans expect this person to survive even a single blow? General Vexstar activated the arena's communication system, his voice booming across the platform and through every ship in the system. Citizens of the galaxy, he announced, today you will witness the end of human arrogance. Today you will see what happens when weak species challenge their betters. He gestured toward Jinwoo, who stood calmly in the center of the arena, apparently unbothered by the massive alien warrior facing him. The humans sent us this pathetic creature as their champion, Vexstar continued. They think their diplomacy and trade agreements make them strong. Today they will learn the truth about power. But even as the general spoke, some of the older species in the viewing platforms remembered other times when humans had been underestimated. They remembered the Shadow War, when human ships had held the line against impossible odds. They remembered the liberation of Zephyr, when human soldiers had fought through hell to save alien children. Arena systems activated, displaying the combat rules to every observer. This was single combat to the death. No weapons beyond natural abilities. And simple tools, no outside interference, no mercy. The energy barriers reached full power, sealing the two fighters inside their circular prison. The galaxy held its breath as the moment of truth approached. In the human observation area, President Minho watched through a secure connection from Earth. His face showed no emotion, but his hands gripped the arms of his chair tightly. Defense Minister Yuna stood beside him, her voice barely a whisper. Sir, what if we are wrong? What if 20 years of training is not enough? Minho did not answer immediately. Thought about the young man standing alone in the arena, about the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, about the future of humanity among the stars. Then he remembered something Jinwoo had said during one of their rare meetings when asked about his chances against superior opponents. I do not need to be stronger than them. I just need to be smarter. The final moments before combat stretched like hours. Every being in the galaxy seemed to hold their breath as two figures faced each other across the arena. One was a mountain of muscle and armor and technology. The other was a quiet human who looked like he had no chance at all, but appearances could be deceiving in the galaxy. Was about to learn that humans had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone realized. The arena's energy barriers hummed with deadly power as the two fighters faced each other across the circular platform. Groktar stood like a mountain of death and destruction, 3 meters of muscle armor and cybernetic enhancement. His forearms, spread wide, showing claws that could cut through Starship Holgenwu, remained in the center of the arena, completely calm as hands. Empty, his breathing steady to most observers, watching from the safety of their ships, he looked like a man walking toward his own execution. The contrast was overwhelming. Groktar's presence alone made the arena floor vibrate with each step. His cybernetic enhancements glowed with power, his targeting systems locked onto the human, his natural armor gleamed under. The harsh lights begin, General Vextar commanded, his voice echoing across the platform and through every ship in the system. What happened next would be remembered throughout galactic history as the moment everything changed. Grokta charged immediately, his massive form moving with speed that should have been impossible for something so large, his forearms spread wide to grab and crush his opponent. The impact of his feet against the arena floor sent shockwaves through the structure. He was death. Incarnate, unstoppable force given form. His roar of battle fury could be heard even through the energy barriers. The viewing platform shook as beings pressed closer to witness what they thought would be the shortest fight in galactic history. Jinwu did not move until the last possible second. Then, with a motion so fluid it seemed almost casual, he stepped aside. Groktar's massive form thundered past him, his claws grabbing nothing but empty air. Crowd murmured in confusion across thousands of ships. The human had simply moved, but that was impossible. No being could react that quickly to a Krex Charga. Grokt spun around, his four eyes blazing with confusion and growing anger. He had never missed a target before, never failed to connect. With an opening charge, his targeting systems insisted he had aimed perfectly, yet somehow the human was no longer there. This time he would be more careful. Groktar approached slowly, using his massive reach to slash at the human from multiple angles. His forearms moved like deadly whips, each one capable of cutting the human in half, but again Jinwu was not there when the claws arrived. He flowed around the attacks like water, never seeming to hurry, never appearing stressed. Each movement was precise, economical, perfect. What is he doing? Vextar demanded from his command box, his voice tight with confusion. The Valdris observation vessel Elder Wisdom Keeper Naltash leaned forward with sudden understanding. He is learning, she said quietly. To her companions, look at his eyes. He is studying his opponent. The other elders focused their ancient attention on the human fighter. They could see it now, the way his gaze tracked every movement, analyzed every attack pattern, memorized every detail. Of his opponent's fighting style, humans, they adapt. Naltash continued, her musical voice filled with growing respect. Minutes passed and the pattern continued. Groktar attacked with increasing fury and desperation, his massive form moving faster than most beings could follow, yet somehow none of his strikes connected. The human moved like he could see the future, always one step ahead. Always just out of reach. The Krex champion's breathing grew heavy, despite his cybernetic enhancements. He had never fought an opponent who could avoid his attacks so completely. His confidence began to crack as confusion turned to desperation. In the Nexori observation ship, the quantum computers ran constant analysis of the battle. Their calculations showed that the human's movements were not random, but followed complex patterns that suggested he was predicting his opponents. Attacks probability calculations updated. The central processor announced human victory probability increased to 12.7%. In the Zephyrian command vessel, Admiral Kuan watched with growing excitement. He had seen this before during the Shadow War. When human soldiers had faced impossible odds. He is not just avoiding the attacks, Kuan said to his officers. He is learning everything about his opponent, every move, every weakness, every limitation. The battle had been going on for nearly 10 minutes now, and Groktar was beginning to tire. His attacks were becoming less precise, more desperate. He had never faced an opponent who could make him look clumsy then. Something changed in the human's posture. Jinwu's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he had finally seen something he had been waiting for. His stance shifted almost imperceptibly, but those who knew combat recognized it immediately. He was done learning now. He was ready to fight. Groktar lunged forward with all four arms extended in a final, desperate attempt to end the battle. His cybernetic enhancements pushed his speed beyond their normal limits his targeting systems locked onto every possible escape route instead of avoiding the attack. Jinwoo stepped into it. His hands moved with precision, born of 20 years of training, striking specific points on the Krex's anatomy, not to cause damage but to disrupt the neural pathways that controlled his cybernetic enhancements. The effect was immediate and devastating. Groktar's left arm suddenly went limp, the cybernetic enhancement that had doubled its strength failing completely. His roar of confusion echoed through the arena as his right arm followed. Impossible, Vexstar shouted from his command box. How does he know our physiology? How does he know where our neural pathways are located? But the humans had been preparing for this moment for decades. They had studied every species they had encountered, learned their anatomy, their weaknesses, their fighting styles, while other civilizations relied on their natural advantages. Humans had made it their advantage to understand everyone else. A Groker stumbled backward, his enhanced strength failing as more of his cybernetic systems went offline. The targeting systems in his eyes flickered and died. His natural armor suddenly seemed heavy without the powered assistance he had relied on. For the first time in his life, the greatest warrior in Krex's history felt something he had never experienced before. The crowd watching from the observation ships fell silent as they realized what they were seeing. The human had not just been avoiding attacks, he had been studying his opponent, learning exactly how Krex's physiology worked, finding the precise points where their cybernetic enhancements connected to their nervous systems. Jinwoo stood calmly in the center of the arena, his breathing still steady, his expression unchanged.
Ow.
But now there was something different in his eyes, something that made even the bravest warriors in the viewing platforms take an involuntary step backward. He looked like a teacher who had just finished explaining a lesson to a particularly slow student. In Earth, President Minho watched the display screens with growing pride around him. His advisors began to realize that their quiet species had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone had imagined. The humans had done what they did best. They had learned, they had studied, had prepared, and now they were ready to show the galaxy what happened when you threatened the innocent. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since the challenge had been issued, the outcome was no longer certain. The greatest warrior in Krex's history faced a human who had spent his entire life learning how to defeat creatures exactly like him, and in the depths of space, watching from 1,000 different ships, the galaxy began to understand that they had seriously underestimated the quiet species from the small blue planet. The battle's end came not with the thunderous crash that everyone expected, but with something far more terrifying to those who understood what they were seeing. Grokatar, stripped of his cybernetic enhancements and confused by the human's impossible knowledge of Krex's anatomy, made one final desperate charge. His natural strength was still formidable, his claws still deadly, but without his technological advantages. He was no longer the unstoppable force he had been. His movements were clumsy, desperate, the movements of someone who had relied on enhancement for so long he had forgotten how to fight without it. Jinwoo met him halfway across the arena, his movement so fluid it seemed like he was dancing rather than fighting. He caught the massive alien in a technique that used Groktar's own momentum against him, redirecting the charge into a throw that sent the 3-meter-tall warrior crashing to the arena floor. The impact shook the entire platform. Groktar lay still, not dead, but completely unable to move. Jinwoo had struck specific nerve clusters that would paralyze him for hours, a technique that should have been impossible for any non-Krex's. Tenotha arena fell silent. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds stared in complete shock at the human standing calmly over the fallen champion. The greatest warrior in Krex's history lay motionless on the ground, defeated by someone who looked like he should have been working in a library. Victory to the human. The arena's automated system announced its mechanical voice, the only sound in the vast silence. For a moment that seemed to last forever, nobody moved, nobody spoke. The galaxy had just witnessed something that should have been impossible, and none of them could quite believe what they had seen. Then the silence shattered. General Vexstar's voice exploded across the communication channels, his forearms gesturing wildly as rage consumed him. "Ah! This is impossible. No human could know our weaknesses. You must have cheated you." must have had help. His words were broadcast to every ship in the system, carried by the same channels that had brought his original challenge. The general who had called humans cowards was now accusing them of cheating because they had one president. Minho's voice came through the speakers, calm and measured as always. "General, we did not cheat. We simply did what humans do best. We learned." "What?" Vextor demanded, his voice shaking with fury. "Everything," Minho replied. The single word hung in the space between the ships, carrying with it implications that sent shockwaves through every species present for centuries. "While you conquered and others hid, we watched. We studied, we learned the anatomy of every species, the fighting styles of every culture, the weaknesses of every warrior. Prepared for the day when someone would challenge us." The revelation hit the galactic community like a tsunami. The humans had not just sent a warrior, they had sent the culmination of centuries of study, preparation, and adaptation, while other species had relied on their natural advantages. Humans had made it their advantage to understand everyone else in the Valdris observation vessel. Elder Wisdom Keeper Neltash spoke into her communicator, her ancient voice carrying across the galactic channels. "Let this be a lesson to all who would challenge humanity. They're not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most numerous, but they are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, a species that never stops learning." The words resonated through every ship in the system, carried by translators to every language known to galactic civilization. For the first time in centuries, the ancient Valdris had given their formal recognition to another species on the Nexari collective ship. The quantum computers ran final calculations on what they had witnessed. Their analysis showed patterns they had never seen before, adaptive learning that went beyond anything they had thought possible. The human did not just defeat the Krex champion, the central processor announced. He studied him, learned his every weakness, and then applied that knowledge with perfect precision. "This suggests preparation on a scale we did not imagine possible." Admiral Kewen of the Zephyrian Stormlords activated his ship's broadcast system, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought beside humans before, have seen human warriors in battle before. He announced to the galaxy, "During the Shadow War, when the Dark Fleet came to destroy our children, human soldiers stood with us. They fought not because they had to, but because it was right. Today we have seen why they are the most dangerous allies and the most terrifying enemies." As Jinwu walked back toward his transport ship, he paused at the edge of the arena, his voice carried clearly through the communication systems as he addressed the alien general who had started this confrontation. "General Vextar, you called us cowards, but courage is not about being the biggest or the strongest. It is about standing up when someone threatens the innocent, no matter what the odds." He gestured toward the ships surrounding the arena, the massive gathering of civilizations that had come to witness what they thought would be humanity's defeat. "Wanted to see our warriors. Look around you. Every human ship out there, every colony you threatened, every child you tried to frighten, they're all warriors, General. We all are." The words carried weight that went far beyond their simple meaning. Every being in the galaxy understood what the human was saying. This had not been about individual combat. It had been about something far more important. Humans had not just defended themselves. They had shown the galaxy what they truly were, not the peaceful traders and diplomats that everyone had assumed, but a species that had spent centuries preparing for the day when someone would threaten those they protected. As Jinwu's transport ship prepared to depart, General Vextar made one last desperate attempt to salvage his reputation and the honor of the Krex Empire. "This proves nothing," he broadcast to the galaxy. "One lucky victory does not make humans warriors. The Crimson Fleet still commands 10,000 ships. We could destroy every human colony in the Outer Rim." But before President Minho could respond, something unexpected happened. Ships throughout the system began moving, not away from the Krex fleet, but toward it. The Zephyrian Stormlords positioned their vessels between the Crimson Fleet and the human colonies. The ancient Valdris deployed their crystal ships in defensive formations. Even more surprising, the Nexari Collective broadcast a message that shocked everyone. "Listening, General Vextar, your challenge has been answered and your champion defeated. Honor demands that you accept this result. Any attack on human civilians will be considered an act of aggression against the galactic community for the first time. In Krek's history, their military might was being challenged not by one species but by dozens. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of when threatened, and they had decided which side they wanted to support in. The tactical displays showing enemy ships surrounding his fleet. His officers reported that more species were arriving every hour, all of them positioning themselves as defenders of human. Spacer, one of his lieutenants, said quietly, "Perhaps we should withdraw. The political situation has changed. We are outnumbered 52-1. But Vexstar was not ready to admit defeat. His pride and the warrior culture of his people demanded that he respond to this humiliation. Somehow the human got lucky. He announced to his fleet, "Nothing more. We are still the greatest warriors in the galaxy." One victory does not change thousands of years of Krek's dominance. It was then that Jinwoo's voice came through the communication channels one final time. His words were quiet, but they carried across the system to every ship and every listening post in known space. "General, you still do not understand. This was never about one warrior defeating another. This was about showing the galaxy what happens when you threaten people who cannot defend themselves." The human's transport ship had reached the edge of the system, but his voice continued clear and calm. "You called us cowards because we prefer diplomacy to war, because we choose trade over conquest, because we protect instead of destroy, but you forgot something important about humans, General." The entire galaxy waited for his next words. "We remember every kindness shown to us, and we remember every threat made against us. You threatened 50 million. Innocent people. You called us cowards in front of the entire galaxy. You challenged us to prove our worth is." Voice grew colder, carrying an undertone that made even the bravest warriors shiver. "Consider it proved." The transport ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a galaxy that would never look at humanity the same way again. The quiet species from the small blue planet had shown their true nature, and the universe had taken notice. In the days that followed, the consequences of the battle spread throughout known space. The Krek's empire found itself isolated as species after species chose to align themselves with humanity instead. The Crimson Fleet's reputation for invincibility was shattered beyond repair. General Vexstar himself was recalled to the Krek's homeworld, where he faced the judgment of his own people. The warrior culture that had once celebrated his conquests now saw him as the general who had brought shame upon their entire species. On Earth, President Minho stood in his office, looking out at the peaceful blue sky above the capital. His advisors had spent days dealing with messages from across the galaxy. Species that had never acknowledged human existence were now requesting trade agreements, defense pacts, and cultural exchanges. Defense Minister Yuna entered the office carrying a datapad filled with reports. "Sir, the galactic situation has stabilized. The Zephyrians have offered to share their storm drive technology.